Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I've gotten a lot of questions recently regarding what some of my primary baits were in 2023 and whether or not I think those will be big players for me moving forward for 2024, which is getting ready to start here in a few weeks. So I thought I would do kind of a quick video regarding some of these baits that were just instrumental in my performance this year. They're baits that I've grown to have a lot of confidence in, and I expect them to be big players for me moving forward. Now, if you watch my season or you watch my videos and you follow along with my season, you know that this guy right here is one of my absolute must haves. This is the Berkley Power Bait Maxent, the General, the 5-inch size. I fish it wacky rig style. Every lake I go to, I've got one of these tied on in some form of a natural color, whether it's a baby bass, green pumpkin, black and blue, something along those lines. But this is an absolute must have. It is really a bait that generates strikes in really pressured water. It generates strikes and can put fish in the boat fast when the fish are actively feeding. And for me, I'm a big power fisherman. I like to fish shallow, but anytime I feel like I need to slow down, this is the bait that I go with. So I definitely could not uh I definitely need to have these in my boat for the upcoming season. It's an absolute must for me. I mean, I won, like I said, the Mississippi River event on it. I caught pretty much every one of my weigh-in fish at the Potomac River on it. I probably caught one or two weigh-in fish in almost every tournament this year on it. And it works everywhere I go. That's the thing. You got to have your soft stick bait wacky rig in the boat. Now, when I go from there, the next bait that probably played the most for me across the country in just terms of putting fish in the boat was our core tackle hover rig. Now, I had a lot of different baits that I like to fish it on. This is the Bass Tricks Flash Trick, which is one of my favorite baits to use with the hover rig, just because it is hollow on the inside and you can see the weight up in there. But it just is a really easy bait to rig and it is extremely productive at catching fish. So throughout the season, this was one of those rigs or setups that I relied on a lot of the time to put weigh-in fish in the boat for me. If fishing was tough, I could count on this to catch me some keepers, and then at that point, maybe I went on to fishing more bigger power moving baits for a bigger bite. But when I think about tournaments where I finished, I think 16th at Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma, I caught, I'm gonna say, three quarters probably of my fish on a hover rig. Clark's Hill Lake, where I had a 18th place finish. I think I caught the first 2 days. I think I caught a limit of spotted bass on a hover rig. It just was one of those baits. Everywhere I went, I could catch fish on it. It's very similar to like a wacky rig, but I like to fish it generally a little bit deeper. Like a weightless wacky rig is great in like 3-4 feet of water. The hover rig is great in like that 4 to 12 foot range. So I kind of have that as a 1-2 punch, but I definitely relied on this guy quite a bit. Uh, and then I love to power fish. Like, I know there's a lot of guys that are drop shot guys. I'm not really that guy. I do fish drop shots, don't get me wrong, but I would much rather power fish. And when I look back on the season, I had a handful of baits that really worked for like a couple of tournaments. And then like I jumped to another bait and that worked for a couple tournaments. Then I jumped to another bait and then that worked. So like one of my favorites was this guy right here. This is the Z-Man Jackhammer. And then the Power Stinger, Berkley Power Bait Power Stinger in this red color was like my go-to. I absolutely love throwing this red throughout the season. But I mean, I found the area. I was fishing in Florida in practice on this guy. I caught a bunch of my good fish where I finished like in the top 20, I think, at Clark's Hill Lake on this guy. And then I kind of rely on it quite a bit just for like a fish here and there. But I really did have better luck on this season than I have had in the past. But a chatterbait or a whichever vibrating jig you prefer is a very, very good big fish bait. So for me, I don't generally throw it all day long, but a lot of times I'll have very specific areas where I like to throw it. And when I get bit, the average is better than, say, if I was throwing the wacky rig or something like that. But this has been a major player for me. Uh, Another one, and it's kind of taken away some of the time that I put in with the vibrating jigs, has been this guy. This is the Strike King Hybrid Hunter. This is a bait, you know, if you watch Todd Castledyne's show, who I've been doing some shows with, I mean, he loves this thing, but there's a lot of pros that have been throwing this for the last couple of years. And I knew about it, but I didn't go out and do it myself. You know, but I really kind of had the eye-opening experience last season at the Harris Chain Lakes fishing around some hydrilla, and I saw how good this could be. So then for me, like, I've been throwing it in any of the grass lakes, but not just grass. I don't have to have grass. Like, if I'm fishing around areas that have a bunch of stumps, I'll use it because it deflects off the stumps really well. I'll fish it through areas that just have some cover. Like, I was throwing it down at Okeechobee, caught a bunch of fish on it, but I was fishing more like dead cattail clumps. It wasn't even really grass. But this thing has really become a bigger player for me, and I fish it in those same areas where I do throw, say, a vibrating jig or a swim jig. It's just one of those things that I've just got a lot of confidence in it right now. And when I look at the schedule for 2024, I think that Hybrid Hunter could be a big player there. It's a very unique crankbait. There's the action of it, where it's so wide, is different than most other crankbaits, which I really, really like. Another one that was a big player for me this year was this guy. This is one I just took out of the tackle box. You can see I've got the hooks rolled over because I throw it quite a bit in practice. This is the Berkley Spin Rocket, the MF Bluegill Color. This was a huge player for me this year in my top 20 down on Okeechobee. I threw it all throughout the spring. I threw it and I located a bunch of really good fish with it that I didn't necessarily catch in the tournament with it, but I was able to catch, say, with the wacky rig or one of the other baits. For me, it's a good bait to locate areas that they're using. And if they're, for whatever reason, not willing to bite it, they still show themselves. But this thing has been a huge player. I caught some really big smallmouth back here up in Wisconsin, fishing it in between major tournaments. I mean, I threw it all year long, really, up here, and caught a lot of big fish. But this is quickly becoming one of my absolute favorite topwater baits, and a bait that I have tied on almost all year long at this point. And then the last one is this guy. So this is the Berkley Maxent Creature Hog, one of my favorite pitching baits. But it's also become my favorite bait for the Ozark rig, which we released here this fall, another core tackle setup to replace a Texas rig. The key here is both these have been a big player for me. I really have gotten away from Texas rigs the whole second half of the year. Been throwing the Ozark rig and having really, really good success. You know, after our season was over, I pretty much fished a bunch of Wednesday nighters with my boys on the river here and absolutely pounded the smallmouth on it. I caught a down at Okeechobee, I'm trying to remember how big it was, right around 7-pounder, punching creature hog. It's just like my go-to bait. It comes through the water and looks more natural, more like a crayfish than any other bait that I know of. It just really looks fantastic, and I've been using it now for probably 3 years, and just it's my favorite pitching bait. But all of those baits were huge for me this year, and you know, I definitely, kind of like I said, had a bait that would be hot for 1 or 2 tournaments, and then it was like the seasons would change, and I just, for whatever reason, would get onto a different bait. But I don't see any reason to think that these will not be big players for me moving forward in 2024. Just based on what the schedule looks like, there's going to be a lot of shallow water fishing. There's going to be a lot of, we got 2 tidal rivers. It should be an interesting year, but I do expect these to be players for me for at least a couple of tournaments, if not the entire season. So anyways, we'll find out. We'll do a recap video after the 2024 year. Hopefully I'm right. Hopefully we got a lot of good fish catches to talk about. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.